Hi, I'm Ariam, and these are all the books I read in June of 2026. So June was actually a bit of a smaller month for me. I read 10 books, which for me is smaller. I usually read like 13 to 16 books, but everyone is different. I didn't read any comics this month, which might explain some of it. Then, if you watched the May wrap up, you know that in terms of genres and age ranges, it was totally all over the place for me. Like, usually I read a bunch of fantasy and a bunch of adult, and everything else is only a bit. So, and in May, that was just like a lot of everything, or maybe a bit more accurately, a little bit of everything. Well, in June, in terms of the age range that the book is aimed at, we returned to normal for me, but my genres were still kind of all over the place, which is kind of interesting. I'll talk about that a little more. But for age ranges, I read 5 adult books, 2 YA books, 1 picture book, and 1 early chapter book. Early chapter book is like beginner reader books. Then, in terms of genres, I read 3 fantasy and 3 sci-fi, and then I read 1 magical realism, 1 historical fiction, 1 realistic fiction, and 1 nonfiction travel book. So I did have fun that I was reading that much sci-fi. I also DNF'd 1 sci-fi book. That was the only book I DNF'd in June, but I really did have fun reading that much sci-fi. And I think I also had fun in May, so like maybe it's good to branch out of fantasy sometimes, you know? But let's get into the actual books I read. So the first book I read was a sci-fi. It was Rediscovery, science fiction by woman, published from 1958 to 1963. As you can already tell, this was an anthology. So this had a bunch of short stories by woman, published in the year said. It did have an introduction, and every story also had an introduction by a different person. The main introduction of the book, I find the editors, to be kind of jerks. And the introductions to the stories could vary from good to like, you gave me totally the wrong expectations for the story. But overall, like any anthology, some stories I like better, some stories I like less. But overall, I did enjoy this, and there is one story that I'm like constantly thinking about. Like I still like it's constantly coming up in my head. It was such a good story. It was called Unwillingly to School. Then the next science fiction book I read was There Are Many Things by Heather Kaczynski. This is the YA book. It's about a young girl who ends up being chosen for like this super secret space program where she and a bunch of other people are competing to take part to be chosen as part of a space crew that they don't actually know what's going to happen. I did enjoy it. Like, it's very basic. Like, you know, this book isn't going to win any awards on originality, but I like this kind of book. I like this kind of plot, which is why I picked it up, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed our main character a lot, and I really liked seeing her relationships develop. However, the ending, I just kind of pretend the ending didn't happen and the rest of the book is great. Like, the ending wasn't terrible enough to ruin the whole book for me, but it wasn't great. Okay, then I read my magical realism book, which was Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This is another book where I didn't like the ending. I mean, there were also parts I didn't like in the middle because they were explicitly racist, but yes, so there was a part in the middle I didn't like that was explicitly racist. I haven't told you what this book is about. This book is a fictional biography of a person named Orlando, who is born in the Elizabethan era. And when we end the book in the 1920s, this person is still alive and young. And we follow this person. It's kind of a coming-of-age story, despite the fact that in, like, 400 years, they grew from 16 to 33. And when the story begins, this person is a young boy. And when the story ends, this person is a woman. So, and that kind of happens in the middle. And so, it's kind of also, so this book is also talking about, like, the difference in how women's and men's roles in society are perceived. The reason I didn't like the ending is because I felt like by the time we got to the end of the Victorian era, the story was fully explored, and I didn't understand why the Edwardian era was the Edwardian era and the 1920s were added. Like, I'm not going out recommending this book to anyone, especially because there's a racist factor, but I'm not looking to read any more books by Virginia Woolf, but like, I'm not mad. I read it. Okay, then I read a picture book, Amagafaim Shetzilut Yerushalayim by Natanvi El Gover, and illustrated by Noam Nadav. And I'm not going to talk much about it, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I thought it was way too silly, and it's like historical fiction, but it isn't talking about the fact that it's fiction. I did not like it. Then I read a realistic fiction, which was Bread Givers by Anzia Yeziirska. So this is a book that was published in 1925, and it is semi-autobiographical. And we follow a young girl from the time she's around 10 or 12 to when she gets her teaching license, basically, and her first year in teaching. But it's not really about that. She is the youngest daughter in a family of immigrants in the Lower East Side, and her father is emotionally abusive. And it's basically a book about how she deals with that and how she comes to terms with it, and also how she decides to go and get a better life for herself and not give in to her father's emotional abusiveness, which in the end will be keeping, if she gives into it, will keep her down. And I really like this book. Like, this is such a book for me that's like, it's totally character focused. There's no plot. There's absolutely no plot. I love this book so much, but I don't want to recommend it to non-Jews. Okay, then I read Light Chaser. I mean, obviously, if you're a non-Jew, you can read it. Nothing's stopping you. In this era, I wouldn't recommend it, personally. Okay, then I read Light Chaser by Peter F. Hamilton, which was my last science fiction book. Oh, Peter F. Hamilton and Gareth L. Powell, sorry. So this is a novella about a woman who is a light chaser, and this basically means that she is immortal. She works for this company where she goes to different planets, and she basically gathers stories from the people living on these planets. And the planets are very varied. Some of them are like medieval, some of them are very high science fiction, high concept science fiction, and she starts getting, when she's looking at the memories of these people that she's collecting in a science fiction way, she's collecting them, she starts seeing this one person come up over and over, despite the fact that this is happening over thousands of years. And obviously she decides to investigate it. This book was like, okay. I really enjoyed the concept of the worlds. I liked the world building a lot, but I found the motives of our main character to be unrealistic, and it's just like, this is where the story has to go, so we're gonna go there. Okay, this is the point where I kind of went back into my fantasy era, and I read the 3 fantasy books, one right after the other. So I read Camp Rules by Nancy Krulik. This is a Katie Kazoo Switcheroo books. The Katie Kazoo Switcheroo books, if you don't know, are early chapter book series, where our main character, in the first book, our main character, Katie, nicknamed Katie Kazoo, has like an absolutely awful day, like the worst day of her life. She ruins her favorite jeans, she embarrasses herself in front of everyone, and she wishes that she could be anyone but herself. Unfortunately, there must have been a falling star, and her wish comes true. Every book, she turns into someone else. This is a book where she goes into sleepaway camp and turns into someone else, obviously. I won't say who, but it was kind of obvious from the very beginning who it would be. I had mixed feelings about this book. On one hand, I really enjoyed it. I love seeing Katie in sleepaway camp, actually away from the setting that we usually see her in and away from the friends that we usually see her with. However, there was a bullying plot in this that I didn't like. I don't really like bully plots unless it's someone standing up to the bully, and even then I'm kind of iffy, but definitely in this kind of where it's like, oh, we just have to understand the bully better and then we'll become friends, and I didn't like it. That plot. I also really enjoyed the illustrations of this one. John and Wendy illustrate the Katie Kazoo series. Okay, then I read City of Secrets by Mary Hoffman. So City of Secrets is the 4th book of the Extravaganza series, which is such a silly series, okay? I'm not reading this for their literary value. This is a series about teens in modern England when it was published. It was the early 2000s, and each of them finds a different object that they're weirdly drawn to, and when they fall asleep with this object, they go into a kind of alternate universe where Italy is still like a bunch of city-states, and it's like the Renaissance era, and also there's this family that's basically the Machiavellis, and something happens in the plot with them. So in this one, and each book focuses on a different character. So in this book, we followed, oh my god, I can't even remember his name now. Oh dear, I don't think I can remember the main character's name. It was something very bland. But we follow our main character who has dyslexia. And he feels super unconfident about himself because of that. He also feels like his aunt is very, even though she knows he has dyslexia, she's always like sending him like books and stuff. And he just feels iffy about that, like she's not accepting him. And then obviously he goes back, he gets this object, she goes back into Italy. I felt this book to be probably one of the blandest of them. I didn't find the development of his personal story of coming to terms with himself very realistic, because we didn't see that unconfidence come into play anywhere, and the resolution with his aunt just happened pretty quickly and out of nowhere. And the part that happened in Italy, the parts of the story that focus on him versus our main character from the first book, were way less interesting. Like, the parts that focus on the main character for first book, or even on a side character who's a spy, were much more interesting. So this wasn't my favorite of the Stravaganza series, but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. Okay, then I read The Beholden by Cassandra Rose Clark, and let me tell you, I was so nervous about reading this because it had so many bad reviews, and this and Red Covers are my two favorites of the month. I can't choose between them. I love both of them. The Beholden by Cassandra Rose Clark and Bread Givers by Ansia Jagielska. So The Beholden is a large fantasy book. This is also, I was nervous about it because I don't really like books that are over 400 pages. Like, I am a 200 to 350 page book person, and this is like over 500 pages, okay? It has 532 pages or something like that. And so, but I absolutely love the world building in this book. I love the way this book was written. Like, it is plot driven, but we see everything through the characters' perspectives, and like this book would have, and like this book could not have happened in the way that it happened without the characters, which I absolutely, absolutely love. Like, I'm a character person, and I just absolutely love this book. Anyways, what is this book about? Basically, we have two sisters, and they make a deal with a goddess, where basically they get these things they really want, and the goddess can call in a favor anytime she wants. Jump forward like 5 years later, after they've both gotten the things that they really want, are currently experiencing this life that they really want because of what they got. And the goddess is like, by the way, this magician this evil magician who everybody thought died 500 years ago after he was defeated in a war, I need you to bring him to me. He's not dead. And some bad things that I'm not going to spoil are happening in the world, and I need you guys to bring him to me. Go do that. And like I said, I absolutely love this book so much. Okay, and finally, the last book I read in June was Shalosh B'Sira by Michal Vosner. So this is a nonfiction. This is a travel book. This is basically, if you know the book Three Men in a Boat, To Say Nothing of the Dog by Jerome K. Jerome. That was a book published in I think it was either the late 19th century or the early 20th century, and it's a nonfiction travel about three men who go boating on the Thames. So basically, Michal, the author, and her friends two friends decide to do the same thing, and they get a boat and they follow the path of Jerome K. Jerome and his friends. I thought this was really funny. Like, she definitely has a good sense of humor. It's not at all the sense of humor that Jerome K. Jerome has. Very, very different in that regard, but it's definitely a good sense of humor, and I was cracking up while reading this book, and I was enjoying it. But by the way, like, I don't generally enjoy humorous books, but I enjoyed this, okay? However, there are some caveats. I did feel very uncomfortable in this book because she was she just seems like a mean person. Like the things like she was saying about her friends, I was like, how did you get permission to reveal this? You know, like, and if it's not true, like, I'm not enjoying this book anymore because you set it up to be true. Like, if you had written this as a fiction book, okay, fine. But if you're saying it's nonfiction and then you're like revealing this stuff about your friends, like, that are either it's true and I'm like, how dare you say that about your friend in a book that's published in the world, or it's not true and why would you publish it as nonfiction then? And the other thing is, this was published in the early 2000s, or actually even 1999, and oh my god, the fat phobia. Like, and just like, not even the fat phobia, just like the judging of other people's clothes and what they wear and their fashion. Again, I don't, it just feels very early 2000s when that was accepted. I mean, it's also because, like I said, I think she's a mean person, but also because, like, that is something I saw more in the early 2000 books that you read. Very, very judgy. Anyways, that is all the books I read in June of 2026. Those are all the books, really, I should say. I read one part of the series. I continued one series with Cat Rules by Nancy Krulik. Everything else, however... Oh no, I continued the series. I also continued the Extravaganza series with City of Secrets by Mary Hoffman. And Rediscovery Science Fiction by Woman is actually the first in a duology. The other 7 were all standalones. Thank you for watching!